Probably the same thing that would have been frustrating for our supporters, Tom, and that would have been coming off our performance against Hawthorn, where there was great commitment to the contest for the full night, and yet probably in the first half in particular, I thought our second half was better in that area, but our first half in particular, that was compared to the Hawthorn game, which is what our supporters would be comparing it to, they'd be shaking their heads and saying, how can this happen? And that would be a fair statement. So, that comes back, and it was through the whole side. So it's not sort of one or two two individuals. I thought it was our whole side. So we need to address that really quickly and get consistency in that part of the game, and it's going to be important for any side, and doubly important for ours. And so it's a skill that you need week in, week out, to have that really fiercely competitive attitude that enables you to match it with sides that present themselves like Fremantle did, who I thought were excellent.
Is there been an issue with buy or the change of personnel?
No, I think I reckon that'd be too simplistic to talk about that, Michelangelo. I mean, they're going to be buys. You wouldn't want to, if you're going to pull back to that, we don't, if we're good enough to get to the finals, you wouldn't want to have a buy in the final, would you? So no, it's we just got to harden as a group in everything that we do, and it's just a lack of consistency at the moment in that area of the game, which we need to keep being very strong with, very demanding with, so that we eliminate it out of our game. You won't play 22 games up at the highest level. We all understand that, but we certainly don't want to put that sort of first half performance on the board.
Does it happen with a younger group that more likely to happen than when you've got some older heads?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, Sean McKernan, game 3, Henderson, Yench, Davis, they're all going through that. I understand that, but that's the reality. The game that we play demands that sort of level of competitiveness. And so there'll be no backing off, whether you've played 150 games for Rutten or 3 games for McKernan. It's a non-negotiable. You cannot get away with it, and it hurts you every time. Hurts any side every time if it's not at the highest level.
Neil, you asked the question, Neil, but how could it happen? What's your thoughts?
I think it's just a matter of not a clear enough, and we're not a hardened side yet, John. We're not a hardened professional side yet, which we all want us to be. Okay, and your hardened professionals in any elite sport are able to come up week in, week out with a fierce determination. You can look at any sport. We're still learning that as a squad, and that's why we need to be I need to be very demanding as a coach in that area, that there will be no backing off in it. And we need to keep the standard high, and it will come. It will come.
2 weeks to set yourself for that game, was it too long?
No. That's just, to me, it's not enough. It's not a clear enough understanding as a group, in a group, and I include myself in that because I'm in charge of this playing squad. It's we've just got to make sure we keep talking about it, identifying it, what the standard is, what the quality is that we demand. The good thing for our supporters is that, and I'll say this to our supporters, is that we can play at the level. We've seen that. So I'm not talking to our supporters about a level they haven't seen yet. And I'll use the Hawthorn game. I mean, the level we want to see and we need to play at has already been on display in round 1. Today, in the first half of round 3 for us, nowhere near. And so, not a pretty picture for our supporters to look at, and certainly, for our players to play.
The other side now, is it too much to ask, just training form to be a guide on Kurt Tippett, 5 weeks out of playing again?
No, I don't think the Kurt Tippett situation. We had a lot of poor performance today, Michelangelo. I mean, it's, what happens when you haven't got this other area of competitiveness embedded in your game, is that you start to rely on a Tippett to take 4 catches and say, well, he keeps us in the game. And we would be guilty of that today with Patrick Dangerfield. Okay, what will happen is that Patrick had kicked 2 sensational goals, and great recognition to Patrick to have the want and desire to try and generate that. But we can't rely on individuals to win matches for us. They need to fall in line with better team play and competitive footy. So we're not going to be a club that falls back and starts to recognise individuals.
The question more there is that you hadn't played him for 5 weeks. You only had training for him, which was pretty limited. Is it probably just not the right time to bring him back without some sort of game form elsewhere?
No, I'm not interested in at the moment in Kurt Tippett's performance. Okay, and I don't say that flippantly. We have a bigger issue here. Okay, we have a bigger issue. So it's not. I know we can hone in on Kurt maybe didn't do the job that we expected him to do. But Kurt will play a lot better when our team plays better.
Is confidence an issue?
No, not confidence. No.
What happened to Davis?
Hurt his shoulder.
Do you know how he did it? Was he good?
No, I don't know.
What time was it?
It was before half time. Yeah.
What about your skills today, Neil? They were well down.
Yeah, I thought skills in general for both sides were poor. Fremantle a bit better than ours. Tough conditions out there, guys and ladies. But there were certainly some plays, irrespective of the conditions, that we would have expected to do better. But in general, I thought a pretty low level skill game.
Neil, can you talk about the balance of the big men? I understand they controlled the game in the first half, but in the second half, you couldn't seem to get that balance to work.
Well, we got a bit restricted with with what we ended up with up forward. No, John, I'm not going to. I don't want to go there because you see what happens. What happens if you don't have this area of your game cemented and it's a good foundation? You start to jump at shadows. You start to jump at a form of an individual player. You start to jump at your structure of your side. So there's only one area I'm going to be working on for our supporters who are listening, driving home disappointed. I'm going to be working on a fierce competitive nature that we need to have ingrained in our side. And as I said, I don't care whether you're a 2-game player or a 150-game player or a 200-game player. There will be a non-negotiable. And we'll keep working hard and be demanding with it. Once you get that in place, even if you lose by 4 goals, if that's in place, then you can make good decisions about structures and form and the whole thing.
Douglas and Vince copped a couple of knocks as well. I know it's only early, but do you think they'd be okay for next week?
Should be, Tom, yeah. Yeah, I would think they'd both be okay.
How about Davis? How long is Davis going to be sidelined for?
Got no idea, Andrew. I mean, I haven't had a chance to talk to the medicos yet. So.
On the issue of structures, Neil,
Yeah.
I know Harvey made a point that he felt one of the strongest things that Fremantle did was not to allow your guys to work their defensive zones, not to give them time to set them up, not at the time to even find where they were.
Yeah.
How relevant is that?
I don't know. You see, because what I saw was a really poorly competitive side in the first half. What I saw in the second half, Michelangelo, where I thought we were actually in the game for periods of time. So I mean, any zone, anything, any structure that you have when you don't compete, and clearly we were non-competitive in that first quarter. I mean, you could, Blind Freddie can see that. I don't care what structure you got in place. You can't assess it. You see, you can't assess anything. That's the disappointing part.
Injuries are mounting. Are you confident that the depth will push through the next 6 to 8 weeks?
Well, depth's going to, at some stage, the depth is going to run out, Andrew. I mean, so we just have to see what we get out of today. But it won't. We've been through it last year. I'm not interested in the injuries. Okay, we saw last year where we started to blame injuries at the start, and look, they have an effect on you, no doubt. Porplegia, McKay, Sloan, Dougherty in our side. Are we a better side for that? Probably we would be. But that doesn't mean that doesn't excuse what we served up today. So we're not going to try and use that as a reasoning. I'm not interested in that as a reasoning. And so we've been through it last year, and we played some of our best football last year when we were at our absolute lowest personnel-wise. Now we've shown our cards, so that stays, that standard stays. Our responsibility is to try and reach it again.
So you're talking about an attitude and mentality. Do you attribute anything to the environment that came late in the week where people started looking at Adelaide's draw and saying you're playing certain teams twice, Gold Coast twice, so it was going to be a stroll to the top 4?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I didn't hear that, but let's assume that I heard it or players. Yeah, let's assume the players hear it. What will happen, Michelangelo, is that the better you get as a football team, the more pressure comes on. The more accolades will come for you. Got to learn to live with it and still perform. That's a hardening process. Okay, that's being professional in your mind. It's being a hardened professional athlete and a hardened professional team. I can't answer that for you because I don't know. There's no way of me finding out. But let's assume it's correct.